My beloved children, come close to me in this tranquil evening hour, when the world grows still and your hearts yearn for the gentle voice of truth. I am your Jesus, who speaks to you not with harsh commands, but with the tender authority of love that seeks only your eternal happiness. Tonight, I wish to share with you the profound mystery of divine authority, that authority which the Father has given me not to burden you, but to guide you home to the fullness of life for which you were created. Listen carefully, dear ones, for the world has confused you about the nature of true authority. It has taught you to see authority as oppression, guidance as restriction, and divine law as an enemy to your freedom. But I come to reveal to you that authentic authority, the authority that flows from divine love, is the most liberating force in the universe. It is the gentle hand that guides a lost traveler home, the firm voice that calls a wandering child back from danger, the loving correction that saves the soul from destruction. When the Father speaks through His Word, when He calls you to integrity and faithfulness, He does so not as a tyrant demanding blind obedience, but as a loving physician prescribing the medicine that will heal your deepest wounds. His authority is the authority of infinite wisdom, of perfect love, of absolute truth. He knows what will bring you joy and what will lead to sorrow, what will give life and what will bring death. His commandments are not arbitrary rules designed to limit your happiness, but roadmaps to the abundant life that your heart truly desires. Think of the surgeon who must cut to heal, who causes temporary pain, to remove the cancer that would otherwise destroy the whole body. The patient may cry out during the operation, may wish the doctor would stop, but the wise physician continues because he sees what the patient cannot see. He understands that this momentary suffering will prevent a lifetime of agony, that this brief intervention will restore health and vitality. So it is with divine authority, my children. The Father's firm hand, His uncompromising call to holiness, His refusal to lower His standards to accommodate human weakness, all spring from a love so deep, so genuine, so concerned for your ultimate welfare, that He would rather see you struggle now than suffer eternally. The Word of God is indeed demanding, as tonight's message reminds us, but understand the beauty of this demand. When I gave my life upon the cross, when I poured out every drop of my blood for your salvation, I did so not to place you under a burden of impossible debt, but to show you the infinite value of your soul, the immeasurable worth of your eternal destiny. The cross reveals both the depths of divine love and the seriousness of the spiritual life. If I was willing to endure such agony for your sake, how precious you must be. If salvation required such a price, how vital it must be that you respond with the fullness of your being. The Father asks for your totality, not because He is greedy for your devotion, but because only in complete surrender can you find the wholeness for which you were made. You are like vessels created to hold divine love, some large like mighty chalices, others smaller like delicate cups, but each designed to be filled to capacity with the precious wine of grace. When you hold back parts of yourself, when you offer God only partial surrender, you remain forever unfulfilled, forever aching with the emptiness that only total abandonment to love can fill. This is why the spiritual journey requires such commitment, such integrity of life. Every soul must reach its own particular summit of holiness, must become fully what God created it to be. This journey may last the whole span of earthly life, and if incomplete here, must continue in purgatory until the vessel is perfectly cleansed and completely filled. There are no shortcuts to sanctity, no compromises that lead to ultimate fulfillment, but what appears as demanding requirement is actually merciful provision, for God desires your complete happiness. And complete happiness comes only through complete union with Him. The warning against the love of money, against the inordinate desire for wealth and material possessions, flows from the same divine concern for your well-being. Money itself is not evil, but the love of money, the worship of wealth, the making of material goods into false gods. This truly is the root of countless evils. I have watched through the centuries as human hearts have been corrupted by greed, as souls have sold themselves for gold, as the pursuit of riches has led to exploitation, deception, and the crushing of the poor. When you make wealth your master, you become enslaved to something that cannot satisfy the deepest longings of your heart. You spend your life accumulating treasures that moth and rust destroy, possessions that cannot accompany you beyond the grave. Worse still, the pursuit of wealth often requires you to compromise your integrity, to view other people as obstacles or opportunities, rather than as beloved children of the same Father. The wealthy often become isolated in their abundance, surrounded by luxury, but starved of authentic relationship, possessing everything except what matters most. But I do not condemn those who have material blessings, for the Father gives good gifts to his children. Rather, I warn against the attachment that makes you dependent upon these gifts for your identity and security. I call you to hold all earthly goods lightly, as stewards rather than owners, as trustees of divine providence, rather than masters of your own destiny. When wealth serves love, when material blessings become instruments of compassion and justice, when abundance is shared rather than hoarded, then even great riches can become pathways to holiness. The rich young man who came to me was not condemned for his wealth, but invited to discover something infinitely more valuable. When I asked him to sell all he had and follow me, I was not imposing an arbitrary burden, but offering him the chance to exchange fool's gold for real treasure, temporary pleasure for eternal joy. He went away sad, not because I was unkind, but because he had not yet discovered that what I offered was worth infinitely more than what I asked him to leave behind. This same invitation I extend to each of you, dear ones, not necessarily to give away all your material possessions, for circumstances differ and callings vary, but to give away all attachment to these possessions, all dependent upon them for happiness. Learn to hold everything with open hands, ready to use what you have for love's sake. Prepare to let go of whatever becomes an obstacle to your relationship with God. The freedom that comes from this detachment is more valuable than any earthly treasure. The firmness of divine pedagogy, the uncompromising nature of divine truth, extend beyond material concerns to every aspect of spiritual formation. When the gospel speaks of cutting off a hand that causes you to sin, of plucking out the eye that leads you astray, it uses dramatic imagery to convey a vital truth. There are some situations, some relationships, some habits that are so destructive to spiritual life that they must be severed completely, no matter how painful the separation may be. This is not cruelty, but compassion of the highest order. The alcoholic who continues to frequent bars, the unfaithful spouse who maintains inappropriate friendships, the person struggling with addiction who keeps dangerous company. All these need the courage to make radical breaks with whatever feeds their weakness. It will cost them dearly, at least in the beginning, but the alternative is spiritual death, the gradual corruption of everything beautiful in their lives. I know how difficult such choices can be, my children. I understand the agony of separation from people, places, or pleasures that have become dear to you, but lead you away from your true destiny. But I also know the liberation that comes when you courageously choose the narrow path that leads to life. What seems like loss becomes gain. What appears as punishment becomes blessing. What looks like limitation becomes a doorway to unlimited joy. This divine firmness becomes especially crucial in the formation of children, in the sacred responsibility of parents and educators to guide young souls toward their eternal destiny. The greatest act of love parents can perform for their children is not to shield them from every difficulty, not to provide them with every pleasure, not to remove every obstacle from their path, but to form them in strength, wisdom, and virtue so they can navigate life's challenges with grace and courage. The modern tendency to treat children as little gods, to anticipate their every need and gratify their every desire, may appear loving, but actually springs from misguided understanding of what love requires. True love sometimes says no, sometimes allows struggle, sometimes permits the very difficulties that build character and resilience. When parents consistently remove challenges from their children's lives, they rob them of the opportunity to develop the spiritual muscles they will need for the journey ahead. Wise parents, like the wise divine parent, combine tenderness with firmness, affection with authority, mercy with justice. They are quick to comfort genuine distress, but slow to rescue children from the natural consequences of poor choices. They provide guidance and support while expecting effort and responsibility. They demonstrate unconditional love while maintaining clear boundaries and consistent expectations. The formation of faith in children requires the same balanced approach. In a culture that has largely abandoned religious truth, that treats faith as optional or personal preference rather than as a foundation of meaningful existence, faithful parents must have the courage to swim against the current. They cannot simply go along with societal trends that undermine spiritual values, cannot treat divine truth as one option among many, cannot allow the formation of their children's souls to be left to chance or cultural influence. This requires sacrifice from parents, the sacrifice of popularity, of ease, of the approval of others who may consider their approach old-fashioned or extreme. It requires the cultivation of deep conviction, of personal holiness, of authentic relationship with God that can withstand social pressure and cultural opposition. Parents cannot give what they do not have, cannot form children in faith they themselves do not possess, cannot lead children to a God they themselves do not truly know and love. But oh, the beauty of families, where parents take this responsibility seriously, where children grow up surrounded not by the shallow entertainments and empty pleasures the world offers, but by the deep joy and lasting peace that come from life grounded in divine truth, where young people develop not just intellectual knowledge, but wisdom, not just social skills, but virtue, not just career preparation, but understanding of their eternal purpose and destiny. The authority of love, whether exercised by divine providence or human parents, often appears harsh. To those who do not understand its purpose, the world preaches a false compassion that avoids all difficulty, that seeks to eliminate every form of suffering, that confuses enabling with love. But true compassion recognizes that some forms of temporary pain prevent greater permanent damage, that some struggles are necessary for growth, that some challenges are actually gifts in disguise. When I allowed myself to be lifted upon the cross, when the Father permitted his beloved Son to suffer and die, it was not because divine love had failed or because mercy had been exhausted. It was because love itself required this ultimate sacrifice, because the salvation of humanity demanded this total gift, because only through such complete self-offering could the bonds of sin and death be forever broken. The cross reveals the difference between sentimental feeling and authentic love, between superficial kindness and profound compassion. Authentic love is willing to endure any cost for the sake of the beloved's ultimate good. It will inflict necessary pain to prevent greater suffering, will deny immediate gratification to secure lasting happiness, will demand growth, even when growth is difficult. This is the love I offer you, dear children, and the love I invite you to embrace in your own relationships, not the easy love that tells people only what they want to hear, that avoids all confrontation, that values peace over truth, but the demanding love that calls forth the best in others, that refuses to enable destructive behavior, that speaks truth even when truth is unwelcome. Tonight, as you reflect upon these truths, examine your own heart with honest humility. Where have you been avoiding the authority of divine love in your life? What areas of compromise have you allowed to remain What attachments have you been unwilling to surrender? What growth have you been resisting because it requires effort or sacrifice? Do not be discouraged by what you discover, but be grateful for grace that allows you to see clearly, for recognition of the problem is the first step toward healing. Ask for the courage to embrace the demanding love of God, to welcome His authority as the gift it truly is, to trust in His ways, even when they seem difficult. Lead a life in peace and joy. Pray for the strength to exercise the same loving authority in your own relationships, to be willing to speak truth in love, to set boundaries when necessary, to refuse to enable what is destructive, even when enabling would be easier. Remember that the goal of all divine authority, all spiritual discipline, all moral formation is not conformity for its own sake, but the liberation of the human heart, to love fully and freely. Every commandment is designed to remove obstacles to love. Every correction aims at restoring the soul's capacity for relationship with God and neighbor. Every challenge is intended to strengthen rather than weaken the spirit. There is a beautiful paradox in the spiritual life that the world cannot understand. The more completely you surrender to divine authority, the more truly free you become. The more willingly you accept the boundaries of divine love, the more spacious your soul becomes. The more fully you embrace the demands of holiness, the more joyful and peaceful your heart grows. True freedom is not the ability to do whatever you want, but the capacity to do what is truly good, truly beautiful, truly worthy of your divine calling. The person enslaved to passion is not free, even if no external force constrains them. The soul addicted to pleasure is not liberated, even if society applauds their choices. The heart ruled by selfishness is not autonomous, even if it recognizes no authority beyond itself. But the soul that has learned to say yes to divine love, that has discovered the joy of conforming its will to divine will, that has experienced the peace that comes from perfect trust in divine providence. This soul has found true liberty. It is free from the tyranny of its own appetites, free from the exhaustion of trying to control what cannot be controlled, free from the anxiety that comes from believing that happiness depends upon external circumstances. This freedom grows gradually, like the dawn that slowly but surely conquers the darkness of night. Each act of surrender increases your capacity for deeper surrender. Each moment of trust in divine authority strengthens your ability to trust more completely. Each experience of the peace that follows obedience makes future obedience more attractive, more natural, more joyful. What begins as difficult discipline gradually becomes spontaneous delight. This is your destiny. Dear children, this perfect union of wills, this complete harmony of love. Every challenge you face today, every struggle with temptation, every difficulty in surrendering particular attachments, all of these are steps along the path toward this ultimate freedom. Do not become discouraged when the journey seems long or when progress appears slow. The greatest transformations often happen gradually, imperceptibly, like the changing of seasons or the growth of trees. The saints who achieve this perfect freedom were not different from you in their fundamental human nature. They experienced the same struggles, the same resistance to divine authority, the same temptations to choose lesser goods over greater ones. What distinguished them was their persistence, their willingness to keep returning to surrender even after failure, their trust that divine love would complete what divine love had begun in their hearts. Begin where you are, not where you think you should be. Offer God whatever surrender you can manage today, not the perfect surrender you hope to achieve someday. Trust divine mercy to work with your imperfect efforts, your partial understanding, your limited strength. The divine artist can create masterpieces even with crude materials, can weave beautiful tapestries even with tangled threads. Do not despise small beginnings, small acts of obedience, small moments of surrender. The widow's mite was worth more in my eyes than the large donations of the wealthy, because it represented her complete gift, the totality of what she had to offer. Your small acts of love, when they represent the fullness of your current capacity, are precious beyond measure in the sight of divine love. And remember always that divine authority is never exercised capriciously, never demands something that grace does not provide the strength to accomplish, never asks for a sacrifice without offering an even greater gift in return. Every divine commandment comes with divine assistance. Every call to surrender is accompanied by the grace necessary to respond. Every invitation to deeper holiness includes a power to accept that invitation. Rest now in the certainty that you are held in the embrace of love itself, love that will never abandon you, never compromise with what would destroy you, never settle for anything less than your complete happiness. The authority you sometimes experience as burden is actually the steady hand of infinite tenderness guiding you home. The demands that seem impossible are actually invitations to discover strength you never knew you possessed. The path that appears narrow is actually the highway to limitless freedom. Sleep peacefully, knowing that tomorrow brings new opportunities to respond to love's invitation, new chances to embrace the authority that liberates, new moments to discover the joy that comes only through complete surrender to the God who is love itself. I bless you with my peace, the peace that the world cannot give, the peace that comes from knowing you are beloved, guided, and destined for eternal joy. You're Jesus, who loves you beyond all telling, who guides you with infinite tenderness, who awaits your complete surrender with infinite patience.